This is Solidarity News Brief, bringing you the broadcast of the Los Angeles campaign rally of presidential candidate Peter Sonski of the American Solidarity Party. Let's listen in.
Okay, good. Everybody here, you're going to be the S, okay? And the S is, it's the first letter of the word solidarity. It's also the first letter of the word siren. So I want you guys to make an S like a siren. I want you to go S. You all do that? S. All right, and then over here, you guys are going to be the P. Okay, P is the beginning of party. It's also the beginning of power. And P is a powerful letter. So y'all make a nice rousing P. P. One more time. 1, 2, 3. All right, good. So now let's put it all together. All right. First. P. No, not P. P. Okay. And you guys got to stay on that A. A. All right. Get a little more energy though. One more time. All right. Give yourselves a round of applause. Okay, so in addition to being your party chair, how many of you know that I was also on the ballot this Super Tuesday as our candidate for the United States Senator? Some of you. Okay, well, I got 13,488 votes for our party. That's currently a single state record for any ASP candidate, hopefully broken by our presidential candidate this year, Peter Sonski. So, did anybody watch the vice presidential debate this week? Yeah? What'd you think? And yeah, it was kind of normal, right? There was actually like two people kind of discussing policy, and nobody was insulting each other, and no chairs got thrown. Okay, so that wasn't bad. Okay, but when I listen to Republicans and Democrats talk, what I hear is two parties who are just trying to keep things the way they are and not solve problems for the American people. One of the things I heard about both candidates talk about was housing. Now, I'm assuming everybody here is from California. Okay, so, nope. Where are you from? Okay, well, Texas and Arizona. Housing is a little cheaper in Texas, not so much in Arizona, but you know, what everybody used to think was a California problem is now becoming a national problem. And it's hurting our young people who can't give money down to buy a house in the first place. There's a lot of reasons for this, okay? But one of the things that came out of the vice presidential debate that I heard was both candidates agreeing that housing is not a commodity. A commodity is something that's just bought and sold. Okay? Wheat is a commodity. Cars are a commodity. Toothbrushes are a commodity. You can choose whether or not to buy these things when you need them, or you can say, actually, I don't need it, I'm not buying it. Housing is different. And I do commend the candidates for realizing that housing is not a commodity. If housing is not a commodity, what is it? Well, Tim Walz said a couple of good things on that point. He recognized what I think we all know in our hearts, and that is a house or home is the place where families are living their lives. It's a place where they learn to love each other. It's a place where they learn to get along. It's a place where they grow together so that they can take the love that they have inside and bring it out to the world when they leave. And so it's different. It's different than wheat and toothbrushes. Cars. So, but what the two of them left on the table was, if it is different, if it's not a commodity, what do we do about it? And they had some ideas. Okay, so Kamala Harris wants to put $25,000 for help first-time home buyers make new home down payments. And that's fine. But it's a kind of a typical Democrat, let's just throw money at the problem. Okay? That only works if the problem is people don't have enough money. But it's not just that they don't have enough money, it's that there aren't enough houses. That's why the houses are expensive, because we don't have enough of them. We don't have enough of them for sale. The housing that we do have for sale is oftentimes owned by people who are not families. As their primary home. When if we want to treat houses differently, we have to restructure the way we deal with houses. So what does that mean? It means that we should recognize that houses and by extension apartments are places where families are supposed to thrive. If we want that to happen, we need to get more families into houses. The way we do that is by promoting an American solidarity principle that we call distributism. Our model is called distributism because we want to distribute not just opportunity, which the major parties talk about, but we actually want to distribute the goods of society in a way that's more equitable. And not just by giving things to people. That doesn't quite work. Instead, we want to create structures that make this possible. So what I proposed in my Senate campaign was that we actually we tax. Now, when you are doing your income tax, you may have noticed that the more money you make, the higher your tax rate goes, right? It's called the progressive income tax, and it works pretty well. It ensures that the people who have the least amount of money pay the least amount of tax. People who make more money pay more tax. Well, my idea, and you can take it or leave it, is that we can do the same thing with houses. So if you have no house, or you have a house for your family, that's great. You don't pay any tax. If you have a second house, you want a house out in the mountains someplace to go relax on the weekends, or you want to have a rental property, well, you should pay for that privilege. If you have 3 or 4 houses, you should pay a lot more for that. By the time you get above 10, you should be paying so much that you probably cannot afford to have those 10 houses in. Now, if we do that, these companies who have been monopolizing houses, especially at the low end of the market, are simply going to have to liquidate. They'll have to sell their houses, they'll have to go take all that money that they're going to make off those sales and invest it in something that's more productive, and give those houses a chance to be sold to these first-time home buyers and owners. But of course, the major party candidates don't want to talk about that because that would involve changing how we do things. It would take the altar of capitalism and knock it down a little bit in favor of distributism, putting more houses in the hands of more families. But our party is about distributing. Another thing that I heard, another thing I heard them talk about was this phrase that Tim Walz and the Democrats have found using now. It's called reproductive rights. Okay? The Democrats have to keep finding new euphemisms to talk about something that is fundamentally abhorrent. So much so that they can't even talk about what it is. They just gloss over it with some other words. Well, I want to make sure everybody knows that in the American Solidarity Party, we fully support reproductive rights. We think everybody should have the chance to reproduce. And we also think that once you actually have reproduced, once there's a child in the womb, the universe has changed. Reality is now different. Something new has occurred. And so we need to let nature take its course and follow along. Embrace the new life that is with us. If we do that, then we will be living in harmony with our creation, with ourselves, and with the whole human race. This is the only thing that makes sense to us. We firmly believe in a party that protects life from conception until natural death. Let nature take its course. Then we will be happy, civilized, we'll be a much better society. Finally, I want to talk about another thing another topic that came up in the debate, which was this idea of manufacturing jobs. As you all know, a lot of jobs over the last few decades have gone over to China, and candidates are running around trying to find solutions for something that's been going on for decades. It's tough to find solutions really fast. But when we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening? J.D. Vance got up there and said, well, it's because of immigrants. They're taking jobs, they're taking houses, and somehow we're just shipping all those jobs off to China. I disagree. If we want manufacturing, it turns out that American manufacturing is alive and well, and it is productive. In fact, the value of what we make is greater than the value of the goods that are made in China. The difference is we're only making the expensive goods while China's making the cheap goods. Now, why did they get all the cheap stuff and we're doing the expensive stuff? Well, it's because labor in America is a lot more expensive than labor in China. Now, why is Chinese labor so cheap? Why is American labor so expensive? It comes down to one thing, and it's something that's very important to our party, and that's healthcare. When I was a kid, governments were spending about 6% of all their budget on healthcare costs. Today we're spending about 20%. That money has been going to healthcare, and we haven't been able to use it for other things. Okay? I'm sure many of you have employer-based health insurance. Okay? Because your company is spending a lot of money on that, that's money that's not being put into your paycheck. So if we could actually get our healthcare costs under control, more of that money would wind up coming home with you at the end of the month. So how do we get there? Well, healthcare, like housing, is also not a commodity. When you need healthcare, you need it right now. You don't have a choice very often as to, should I get this procedure done or should I not? Should I go to Dr. A or Dr. B? Of course, Dr. A doesn't tell you how much they charge. Dr. B doesn't tell you how much they charge. And the way our insurance system is running, you really don't have any idea what anything really costs. And the actual amount you pay has nothing to do with the actual cost that the hospitals and doctors are charging the insurance companies. So it's very opaque. We can't figure out what's going on. We have to work on transparency. People have information, they can make the decisions. If they don't, they can't. So we've come up a long way, but we still have ways to go to make healthcare affordable for everybody in America. Obamacare has gotten us a lot closer to the goal. A lot fewer people are uninsured now than in 2010. But we still haven't gotten there, and it's based on your employer, which means if you're thinking about changing, if you want a better job, one of the things you have to worry about is, what's my new healthcare plan going to be like? Do they have a healthcare plan? And who's likely to have a healthcare plan? Big companies. They can afford it. The small mom and pop stores who are trying to compete for the same for your talent as an employee, they can't give that to you. My wife and I used to own a dance studio. I'm from Mountain View, up in the Bay Area. We had a little dance studio. Didn't last very long, but we couldn't offer health insurance to our dance teachers because we were only open a few hours a week, and all we could really afford to pay them was their hourly wage. They couldn't. We couldn't offer health insurance, and so if there were other dance studios that were bigger, they could get those teachers. By the end of our studio's life, we couldn't even find teachers anymore. We put out ads, and none of them could show up. We couldn't get any applications. And so we need something that is separate from our employer policies. Because if you want to be able to go get a new job, you ought to be able to do that without having to worry about losing your doctor or losing your insurance altogether. And we can do that. Other countries do that. This isn't rocket science. We just made it rocket science because it helps insurance companies and other people profit off the system. But we can do that. We can do all these things if we stay together. And togetherness is what makes the American Solidarity Party the American Solidarity Party. That's not that big S siren that you guys made. Yeah, it's not just S for siren, it's S for solidarity. Okay, when we're together, when we work on the common good, when we try to find a solution that works for everybody, and not just most everybody, or some of everybody, or just a few of everybody, we get better results. Results that we can count on, results that we can depend on, results that Peter Sonski hopes to deliver as the next president of the United States of America. And I am so glad to be here with you today and share these thoughts with you. I am now going to pass off to our executive director for the California State Chapter, Desmond Silvera.
Hi, let me introduce myself briefly. My name is Desmond Silvera. I've been a Californian since 1977. When I was 1 year old, I'm an immigrant. I come from, my family comes from East Africa. When we came here for opportunity, my father was a forklift mechanic. My mom was a stay-at-home mother. She raised myself and my two brothers. We came for economic opportunity as well as the freedoms that we enjoy here in the U.S. When I was around 7 or 8, I think I was probably around 8 years old, that's when I became a U.S. citizen. I think the process takes about 7 years. And from that point on, my parents had been strong supporters of the Democratic Party, because at that point, I believe it was the 70s and 80s, the Democratic Party was more in favor of the common man than the Republican Party. And I learned my values from my parents, respecting the human dignity of everyone. When I finally became an adult, I took voting very seriously. The biggest concern to me was the pro-life issue. And because the Democratic Party at that point had no pro-life candidates, I voted Republican. I think my first election was probably Bush versus Gore. I don't remember exactly. From that point on, each time there was a presidential election, I analyzed the candidates carefully, but because the pro-life issue was always the most important to me, it always turned out to be the Republican candidate up until 2016, when our candidates, our choices were Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. I thought both were so bad, I couldn't bring myself to vote for either. And I went searching for alternatives. I checked, I thought, well, what's the next biggest party? The next biggest party is the Libertarian Party. And I did find one semi-pro-life Libertarian that I cast a vote for in the primary, but still it wasn't a very good match, because his support for the pro-life movement was really more all talk. He didn't support the legislation needed to make this a truly pro-life country. I kept looking and found the American Solidarity Party. To me, that was a perfect fit. It was it fit me in every way. Economically, social conservative values, supports the family, supports marriage, supports the little guy, is friendly to immigrants, is in favor of racial justice, and everything I was looking for. I've been happily a member of the party since 2016, and I haven't looked back. A lot of people come to me and ask me, why vote American Solidarity Party? Even if it aligns with your values, aren't you, you've got no chance of winning at the national level, or very little chance. And anything is possible with God. But let's be realistic that probability is small. Why vote for the American Solidarity Party? Aren't you taking away, as some people say, aren't you taking away votes from Trump? Others say, aren't you taking away votes from Harris? That they feel that your vote belongs to either Trump or Harris. I completely disagree. And a lot of people will bring up the issue of wasted votes. They say, aren't you just wasting your vote? Isn't it just like throwing it in the trash? That I entirely disagree with as well. A lot of people don't realize is that in America, our national presidential election isn't determined by the popular vote. They don't count votes across all states, add them up to a single sum. It's not one single election. It's 51 separate elections, and in each of these elections, they're separate. There are precious few swing states that really determine who the winner is. In some years it's been 5 swing states. This year it's 7 swing states. Here in California, we're a solid blue state. Our vote for the president really isn't going to affect what the result is. We contribute to the popular vote, but the popular vote does not have any effect on who the actual winner is. So people will ask me, well, if that's the case, why vote at all? And my answer to that is because as we vote, it accomplishes a few things. It brings attention to who you're voting for, because that will signal to future candidates what kind of candidate you're looking for in the future. If you're looking for a middle of the road person and you vote for Trump or you vote for Harris, then no one knows that you actually wanted someone more moderate or with values that represent yours. If the candidate that you're voting for has values that are far from your values. By voting for who is the closest to you, who your conscience leads you to the most, even if they aren't highly electable, then you're signaling to future candidates, this is what I want to see in a candidate. It affects your future in that way. So another concern that was brought to me was, well, wouldn't that popular vote, even though it's a bit symbolic, be more valuable to the major party candidates? Just yesterday I had a person tell me that he was very against Trump and he wanted Harris to win by a landslide. So he wanted, even if it's just a popular vote and his vote doesn't count to get her elected, he still wanted his vote go towards her. When you're voting for one of the major party candidates, their vote totals are in the millions, and your one vote will help them a little bit to gain some popularity, but it goes so much farther with a third party candidate. Brings so much more attention to that candidate, and they get noticed. They get noticed. The party gets noticed, and it'll help to grow that movement. When you vote for the American Solidarity Party, you're helping us grow. Back in 2016, our presidential vote count was, I think it was around 8,000 for president in 2016. In 2020, it was 42,000. We had grown 5 times more. This time, we were hoping to get much more than that. Each time around, we're growing the movement. our voices are getting louder, and we are getting noticed by more and more people. There are a lot of significant influencers in politics and in the nonprofit organizations. They have noticed us this time around, and they have spoken favorably towards us. Each time that grows. So when people tell you that your vote is getting wasted, understand why it's not. Understand the power of your vote, the power to draw attention, and make your vote count. Make your vote reflect your conscience. Thank you.
Thank you, Desmond. Before I introduce our main speaker, I want to inform you all of the necessary opportunity that we have. So how many of you are registered voters? Great, that's probably more than enough than we need, but we'll take you anyway. So let me explain really quickly. If you want to be a presidential candidate in California, whether you're on the ballot or a write-in like Peter is, we need to have a full slate of electors. So hopefully you all remember your high school government. We don't actually vote for the president. We vote for 54 people from California who are going to go to Sacramento in December and cast a vote in the Electoral College. Those votes are going to go over to Congress. They're going to be counted on January 6th, 2025 this time, hopefully without any funny business going on. And that's how we choose our president. So to be official, we need 54 people to be American Solidarity Party electors. Now, since 2020, California has changed the rules, and they said not only do you need 54 electors, you need 54 backup electors. So that just doubled the amount of work that we've had to do. So after you've heard Peter's talk, and we're all milling around, we would really like it if you would sign up to be either a primary elector or an alternate elector. We need maybe just a few more alternate electors to fill in our slate and give us the 108 people that we need to satisfy the Secretary of State's office. So if you can do that, it's a one-page form. You simply put in your name and address. We have a notary public over there on the side. His name is Luis Ramirez, and he will notarize your form right here. The campaign's going to cover the cost, so don't worry about this. Won't cost you anything. We just need you to sign up and say, yes, I will be an elector if Peter happens to get 11 million write-in votes and win the state of California from Kamala Harris. If not, you don't have to do anything, I promise. But if you could help the party, that's one giant step that you can take today that would really boost our chances. Because without that, your vote really won't count, because the Secretary of State will refuse to count it. And I'm going to vote for Peter Sonski whether he gets on there or not, but I want my vote to count. And I've already signed the form to be an elector. I can't be all 108 electors by myself. I need your help, okay? So after Peter's spoken, please go see Luis, and we'll fill in the details and make sure that you get it all correct. Thank you. And now, I'm very happy to introduce the American Solidarity Party candidate for President of the United States in the year 2024, Peter Sonski.
Thank you so much. Very grateful to be here. It's a joy. It's an honor, actually, to be here. I'm grateful. It's not lost on me that I am addressing you in a rose garden. I hope to be doing this many times in the future on a rose garden about 3,000 miles east of here, but nonetheless, I think this one is probably going to outshine that one in size and beauty, and so it's a great place to be in Southern California. Why am I here? I'm here because, as Desmond has pointed out, as Mark has pointed out, and I think your witness just by being here, is that we need a different direction. We need to change the way we are doing things in our political system in the United States. I have a great respect and have had an interest since my childhood in politics. In fact, in high school, I was already speaking about my ambitions to be governor of Connecticut. I haven't made it yet, but I have been 3 different elected positions on a local level, and I believe that serving government is an opportunity for all of us. I won't say that it's an exclusive responsibility for all of us, but it is an opportunity, and it's also a chance to introduce ideas, introduce values, introduce a different way of thinking that most of the people that we have in government are unfamiliar with. There are many people whose voices are not heard because we're limiting the voices to just 2 parties of representation. And the system, while we continue to perpetuate it, while we continue to respect it, is not working for us and allowing us to introduce new and more valuable ideas. So I'm grateful for all of you being here today. I'm grateful for your willingness to be different. I'm grateful for your willingness to say that it's not only about being a citizen, being a patriotic member of society to vote, but I also want my vote to bring about something better, something different, a change that is going to set us in a new direction. So, my background. I told you that from my youth I was very interested in politics. I was registered as a Democrat from the very moment that I turned age 18. I grew up in a blue household. My great-grandparents on my mother's side immigrated from French Canada right after the Civil War. Now, for those of you who remember your history, after the Civil War there was a lot of loss of life in the eastern part of the country, but there was also an end to slavery, and so there was opportunity now for employment, and my great-grandfather came to the United States and he worked in the textile industry, fabric industry. My grandfather, on my father's side, immigrated from Eastern Europe at the end of World War I, 1920. So Eastern Europe is liberated, and he has an opportunity for a new start, to get out of the difficult circumstances that he was in Eastern Europe. So he comes to America, and he works in the textile industry. So both of my families grew up working in factories, working to make fabric, and from my youth I can still remember just down the road from me the looms still operating up until the mid to late 1960s, making that fabric. Well, the textile industry has changed, as so many of our industries in the United States have changed. But the work ethic and the values that my parents taught me have not changed. Politics has changed. That very first election, Desmond was recounting his first election. My first election was Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, 1980. I think it's the last time that there have been 2 pro-life candidates vying for the presidency. I voted for Jimmy Carter. Ronald Reagan won, a former Democrat who had turned Republican, and he'd also done an awful lot of work to consolidate people who really had what I'll call conservative values. The Democratic Party that my parents knew and that I was brought up in enjoyed those conservative views. But they changed at about that time, and they decided to go in an alternate direction. They used to be called the party of the little guy. But about that time, they forgot about the little guy who was inside the room. And it was at that time that I said, I can't support a party that is going to be promoting the destruction of defenseless, innocent human life. So I became a Reagan Democrat. And then I became a Reagan Republican. And I remained a Reagan Republican and really a member of the Republican Party until probably after the presidential term of George H.W. Bush, who was Reagan's vice president, so the early to mid 1990s. I couldn't find myself at home in the Republican Party because there were a number of values that the Democratic Party had instilled in me that the Republican Party should. They didn't respect the rights of workers. They supported big government. And these were values that I thought, again, were unfair to a number of people. So I left, and I was politically homeless for decades. And I was doing my best to select the candidates that I believe most respected my views where I could find them. But I couldn't always find them. I had the same crossroads that Desmond mentioned in 2016, because the presidential election of Clinton and Trump was one that I could not select from among those candidates. I wound up voting third party that year, but I was even unhappy with my third party vote. In my searching, a friend introduced me to the American Solidarity Party in 2018, so the mid-year point, 2 years after the presidential election. I read what the party stood for, and it fit me like a glove. Everything that I value from the Democratic Party's position, and everything that I valued from the Republican Party's position, were brought together, and they harmonized. They made sense. They complemented one another in the platform of the American Solidarity Party. I thought, why has nobody introduced this before? Well, then I started looking, and then I learned that indeed it had been introduced before. The ASP had run a candidate in 2016, and it was planning to run a candidate in 2020. So I supported Brian Carroll, and I was an elected official in my community, a member of a regional board of education, and I immediately identified myself as an American Solidarity Party representative. And I tried to bring the views and values of the ASP into my role as a school board member. And then, when the party was trying to select a person that they thought would represent its views on a national level in this presidential campaign, some members asked me, would I be willing to enter the primary and seek that nomination? And I was at a point in my life where I thought that it made sense to do so. And so I agreed to. I was one of initially 7 candidates, 5 that endured to the end, and the party selected me as their representative. So I'm honored to be representing not only the party, but more importantly, values and principles it stands for. And so often today, values and principles seem to be a friendly term, but they aren't always held with conviction. I think we can talk about a certain vice presidential candidate who recently expressed some values and views as a senator that suddenly changed when the opportunity to become a member of the presidential ticket was made available. I may not win this election. I realize that my chances are longer than most, but I'm not going to change the values that I was chosen to represent. I'm not going to change the positions that I think need to be introduced into the public forum. Today, we need a different voice. We need a different view. And that is not coming from either the left side or the right side of the political spectrum. And the ASP doesn't belong on either side. Yes, it has views that are common with the left, and it has views that are common with the right, but we're not necessarily centrist. Centrist often means mushy, it often means indecisive. That's not who we are. We believe very strongly in everything that we stand for, and it begins with respect for the dignity of life. Every piece of public policy that's passed is passed for the benefit of people. Is it education? Is it respect for the environment? Is it interstate commerce? Is it healthcare? Is it housing? Is it foreign affairs? National defense? Everything comes back to be for the benefit of people. And we've forgotten that in society. We've put party elites and party officials at the top of the food chain, and it's their interests most often that are being represented. people who are casting votes get a lot of promises, they get a lot of platitudes, but they don't often get the real results. And that's why I believe we can't perpetuate the system that we're in. The two-party system is not serving America. Plenty of places in the world have multiple party systems. Plenty of places in the world have collaborative government where there isn't one party that holds the majority. There isn't one party that's in complete control. Now I understand. Yes, the objective of elections is to get elected and to be able to be in charge so that you can enact positive legislation. I respect all of that, but I also respect the fact that you can have collaboration, you can reach across the aisle, you can find ways that common ground can be determined and that you can pass measures that are beneficial for all people, not just some. Bringing the third party into the equation is not going to hurt us. Bringing the third party into the equation is going to help us in so many ways. One thing that I will say that both the Republicans and the Democrats agree on, it's not much these days, limit the competition. Don't allow third parties a chance to grow, to flourish, and to become part of the political equation. Desmond and Mark mentioned to you about the requirements that I need just in order to be counted for write-ins here in California. And while it's unique in California that you have to have the alternates, it's still a requirement in many states that I have a full slate of electors. So what you're being asked to do today is what's being asked of many people across the United States. I'm on the ballot in just 7 states, meaning I'm printed option with Laura Nonak, my vice presidential running mate, in just 7 states. Only voters in 7 states are going to be actually able to go in and find my name and select from among all of the candidates in that particular state running for the office of president or vice president. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because each Secretary of State's office across all 50 states in the United States is run by either a Republican or a Democrat. And as I said a moment ago, they all agree on one thing: limit the competition. Some of the requirements to get on the ballot in states is completely onerous. 40,000 signatures in the state of Michigan I would have required in order to get on the ballot. 40,000 signatures. Oh, by the way, you better get 50,000 because every single signature has to be validated. And if not every single one of them meets the standard, it gets dismissed and reduced from the count. So that's what we're facing. I accept that there needs to be a threshold. There needs to be a certain barrier to entry so that not every Tom, Dick, and Harry who wants to be president of the United States can be on the ballot. That's reasonable. What's not reasonable is onerous requirements that limit people like you from having a legitimate candidate who represents their views on the ballot in their state that they can vote for, that they can tell the world, this is what I believe in. These are the values that I want to see brought forth in our country. So your support today means a lot to me. I realize that we could potentially fill these grounds if it was another party because they have much more visibility and they have much more power to bring people here with money that they've raised. I don't care about that. I realized when I got into the race that my chances of winning were very slim. As I've said to many reporters who've talked to me, well, my wife is not picking out fabric samples to change the drapes in the White House. I haven't ordered my address labels for 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I realized that in January I'm probably going to be living in the same house that I'm living in today. But I will win if I can be an option for you so that you can tell parties that are in power today that we don't agree with you, that we prefer another option. I will win if I can introduce ideas, if I can introduce values that are different that are not being heard, that are representing people that are underrepresented today. I will win if I can grow the size of this party and grow it in influence so that people will truly know that there is a viable option, that we don't have to play the game that the two parties prefer that we play. We have the opportunity to make a difference. I'm going to be told, as Desmond said, your vote is wasted. He's a spoiler. He's just stealing votes. He's not going to allow so-and-so to be elected. And oh my God, if so-and-so is elected, our country's going to hell in a handbasket. News for me. I kind of feel like we're already in hell in a handbasket. I kind of feel we've already hit rock bottom, and we're not climbing back up. I think the time is legitimately now for the change. Voting for the American Solidarity Party may or may not get that change this year, but it will get us started. It gets us moving. It gets us growing. And it gets people the confidence to know that we are a party that means business, that has real values, that will stick to those values, and that is not interested in just cronyism. It's not interested in just interests of the party elites, the donor class. It's interested in people. It's interested in people. That's what we need. Those are the differences that haven't been offered. So I thank you for being here today. I thank you for your willingness to come out in the sun and to hear me. I ask you, please, if you are able to be an elector, to participate in that. More than anything, tell people that you know that you met a presidential candidate today who you think can make a difference. You learned about a different party today with a set of views that complement each other, who don't work in opposition to one another, that people can identify with, that people can embrace, that they can value and say, I believe in that, and I believe that that is the direction that we need to go in as a nation. Throughout my campaign, I've used a term that's become a watchword for me, faithful to the truth. And it's from a phrase, a quote from a person named Dorothy Day. For those of you who don't know, Dorothy Day was a 20th century activist. She was born in New York City. She spent some of her early life here in Northern California. She ultimately landed in Chicago, and she went to school at the University of Illinois, and then she moved back to New York, and she began a movement called the Catholic Movement. So she was very closely united with Cesar Chavez and the laborers here in California and in the Southwest. She spoke for them. She spoke for their rights. She was a pacifist. She believed very strongly that we should be in peace with one another. We should be in solidarity with one another. She was arrested many times, and she had some shortcomings in her life, I guess you could say. She had an abortion. She was divorced. She had a pension for getting arrested because of civil disobedience. And there were a lot of people that were turned off by Dorothy Day because of these things. They looked at her and some of the experiences that she had, and they said, no, I can't accept it. Dorothy Day believed in principle. She lived that principle, and she did not compromise that principle. And when Dorothy Day died in the 1980s, people were lined up to pay her tributes. And do you want to know something else? The Catholic Church, just a few years ago, submitted a request to the Vatican in Rome, the church in New York where she died, submitted a request to the church in Rome that Dorothy Day be considered a saint. So that quote from Dorothy Day, faithful to the truth means so much to me. And the whole quote is, don't worry about being effective. Just worry about being faithful to the truth. And that's what I mean about not compromising principle. That's what I mean about knowing in your soul what's right and what's good. And not saying that, well, we should probably let the abortion pill be available to people, even though it kills 60% of the children, results in 60% of abortions in the United States. If you believe in the dignity of human life, you will acknowledge that there are many crisis pregnancies, and we've got to do our level best to find help for women who are in those crisis pregnancies. We've got to find proper health care for them. That's prenatal and delivery and postnatal. We need to find ways that we can have housing. We need to find ways in which we can have adequate wages. We need to find ways in which maybe just one member of a household is all that's required to bring home earnings, so that the other parent can stay at home and rear the family like it used to be. Those are not ideals. Those are realities that we've forgotten. Those are realities that we can go back and reintroduce. That's what the American Solidarity stands for. Those principles, those values. Yes, they'll take effort, because we've allowed for so many years for us to go down a different path, and we need to turn the path around. We need to go back in a direction that we know is right. We can do that. We have to stop acquiescing to just saying, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. Because when you're voting for the lesser of two evils, you're always voting for it. You can vote for a greater good. You may be in the minority this time, and you may be in the minority next time, but eventually you'll be in the majority, and you will be the vanguard, the voters that bring about that positive change that we need. The American Solidarity Party, as I said before, was a godsend to me. When I learned of it, I did all of my research about Christian democracy. I don't know if Christian democracy is a familiar term to you. Christian democracy is a political movement. It's popular in other places of the world. In Europe, it flourished in post-World War II. Its foundations are basically Catholic social teaching, with a lot of influence from the Neo-Calvinist movement, the Reformed Church movement, especially around post-World War II. All of these things combine to make a political movement that's been very successful in Europe and has spread to Latin America. The American Solidarity Party is that manifestation of Christian democracy in the United States. Now, when I say Christian democracy, I'm not talking about theocracy. I'm not talking about trying to get away with a civil government. I respect the civil government. I'm not suggesting that we are trying to turn everyone into Christians either. What I'm suggesting is that the Christian worldview looks at the good of all people, looks at the common good, and it's adaptable in time province to pluralistic society, so that we can implement values and positions that are for the good of everyone. And so I'm very happy to be representing those views, because I believe that they are unique, I believe that they are applicable, and I believe that they are appealing to a broad cross-section of our voters who just haven't had the opportunity to be introduced to it. So I'm asking for your support. Would you please cast a vote for Peter Sonski and Warren on November 5th? And would you please invite others to do so? As Desmond said, if you're a voter here in California, predictably we know the outcome. Predictably we know that this state is going to go in favor of the Democratic candidate. And one vote or two votes for either the Republican candidate or, more importantly, for a third-party candidate is not going to change that outcome. What will change is that people will take notice and vote. A third-party vote is measurable. If you are a person that's fear of terrible policies that might come from one party or an odious candidate from another party, and you said, I cannot accept that, or I cannot accept that, so I have to vote for the other person. Nobody knows that. Nobody understands that you have chosen to vote one way because of your opposition to the other way. If you vote third party, they will clearly vote. They will know that you chose a distinct path. You said, I don't believe in this, I don't accept that. This is the path that I want to follow. The vote is measurable. That's how we will progress. That's how we will introduce ourselves to others. That's how we will grow, and that's how we will bring change. It's hot, so I'm not going to stay here and continue to talk. I'm going to stay and answer any questions that you have, whether as a group or one-on-one. I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your support. God bless you all, and thank you. I'm going to take a sip of water, but who's got a question? Is it working?
Hello, hello.
Who's got a question?
Hello, hello.
Test one, test one. Okay, Mr. Sonski, thank you for coming to California. With my colleague here, Ignatius, we've been having discussions about you. People who are not satisfied with either major party. This is a values-based, from your perspective, it's really values-based. What are your values that you hold sacred that inform what you stand and I do not? Even though you may not get the win in California as a third party, people are making a statement. And my hope is, though, that you and the members of your party still can have influence in our Congress, family values, seamless life, garment of life, conception, birth, natural death, that we can begin to influence through legislation, and we're in a deadlock right now in Congress to get people to dialogue, even to dialogue, come to the table, because the people have to be heard. And what are your hopes, after the election, that you still can be a person, you and the members of your party can be an influence on Congress to help introduce legislation for the common good of all. And I'm curious to hear from you. How can you and your party be that influencer? Okay?
Thank you very much, sir, and I do agree with everything that you say. Christian here interviewed me earlier, and he asked me a similar question about winning. And I said that you can win, but you always have to witness. You always have to bring forth the views that you represent. You have to make sure that they have a place in the public forum. And so you have a legitimate criticism in that the American Solidarity Party has not always been a vanguard for the values in a way that we can. And it's not to say that we've abandoned those values. It's simply to say that we've carried ourselves up to an election and then we've said, okay, we'll do it again in 4 years. That can't be the way we do it this year. We have to continue forward. We have to continue making statements and bringing forward views that are not being brought forward in other ways. So when I took this role, as I said before, I realized that the likelihood of my winning was slim, but I also realized that it's not a role that's going to end maybe in a formal sense on the 6th of November. But it won't end as a person that represented the party. It won't end as a person that holds values. It won't end as a person that media will seek to find a different perspective. And so thank you for bringing that up, because I think that we have been at fault, and I've been open with my colleagues about that in the past. The American Solidarity Party has not carried through after elections, and we need to do a better job.
Yeah, thank you for your speech. And one of the previous speakers brought up some of the issues that came up in the vice presidential debate. But there's another one I'd like to ask you about, and this is the big issue in both the vice presidential and presidential debates. That's the issue of immigration. And Trump is saying that the immigrants are flooding our nation, and he's painting an overly negative picture. But I mean, things have changed, and they seem to be coming in. Millions seem to be coming in rather freely. I'm just wondering, what is your position on that?
So I said the American Solidarity Party stands for the common good. And the common good has to be interpreted this way: that we respect the safety and the welfare of citizens of the United States. That means that we have to protect the borders. We have to keep vice, crime, drugs, trafficking, all negative influences that find their way over the border out to the best of our ability. And we have the ability to do that, by the way. Yes, our border patrol is limited, but we have a military and we have other resources that we can use to do that effectively. We don't necessarily need a wall that's a monument, but we do have to safeguard our borders and protect our sovereignty. Number one. Number two is we have to have an open door. We have to have a way in which people who legitimately want or need to come to this country have the chance to do so. And when they get here, we need to make judgments promptly about their willingness to be here, their reason to be here, how they're going to contribute, and how we are going to allow them to live and operate in this country. Giving them a statement to appear 3 years down the road is insufficient. We can do a better job. We simply need to have more people to be able to address the situation. And we need to treat everyone with dignity. We need to treat them with respect. This is not a big problem, but as the gentleman pointed out, this is what we have in Congress. We have hyper-partisanship. We have loggerheads. We have people who are unwilling to see another point of view. We have a presidential candidate who scuttled bipartisan immigration legislation earlier this year so that it could be a campaign issue today. We haven't had meaningful reform on immigration legislation since the Ronald Reagan era, more than 40 years ago. So I hope that you'll understand that it's a broad, sweeping answer, but we need to protect our borders clearly and all of the harm that can come across the border illegally. But at the same time, we need to be welcoming. America is at a replacement rate of 1.6%. I want to make sure you understand that. To replace ourselves as a human race, every woman should have 2.3 children. That's just to be able to keep pace. So if we're only having 1.6 births per woman, we clearly are not replacing ourselves, and we're diminishing. We're diminishing in size, we're diminishing in labor force, we're diminishing in our ability to sustain ourselves. So, the argument that immigration is harmful, the argument that immigration is taking jobs, I think that's a good thing. I think it's great that people are coming. I'm almost 65. I need Social Security, and I want a younger generation to do it. My wife and I had 9 kids, so I'm hopeful that they're going to be providing for us. Sir.
Yeah. My view is, as President Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. It's second issue. To me, we are on a suicide watch. One of the reasons is because of declining birth rates, and you're killing your own children. That's a suicide watch.
I agree. You know, former President Trump has said on a couple of occasions, I got you the justices that overturned Roe v. Wade. And I don't dispute that. He had an unprecedented 3 justices in a single 4-year term. No other president has ever had that opportunity. And if you remember correctly, he wouldn't have had that opportunity had not a Republican Senate denied President Obama a chance to put forward a nominee before the 2016 election. I'm not going to get into the issue, but I am going to say this. The 3 justices were indeed responsible as voices that overturned Roe v. Wade, but they also are very pro-business justices. So, don't think that the only reason that those justices were appointed were to overturn Roe v. Wade. He thinks that people today should vote for him because of what he did in the past. And I say, if you're not pledging your continued support to them, why should you expect their vote? Why should you expect to have the support from a group of people who have faithfully supported you when you have told them you no longer support them? This is an issue that he says now is where it belongs, in the States. I don't believe that there should be 50 different interpretations about the dignity of human life. Human life is sacred. Human life must be respected from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. It's not for 50 individual states to decide. It's for us as a nation to decide that we respect the value and dignity of every human life from that instant of conception to that instant of natural death.
So basically, you're saying from the womb to the tomb.
That's correct.
All right, so what I put before you, because I need to be clear about what the American Solidarity Party is for. Not only just abortion, everything else that is still brothers, we should have brothers that make war that are in our community.
This was a broadcast of Solidarity News Brief of the Los Angeles, California campaign rally for Peter Sonski of the American Solidarity Party. Good day, and remember, all human life has dignity from conception to natural death.